Hello, I hope you are well and keeping safe. This is a short video on structure. Specifically in Macbeth, you're going to need your document, which will be in the email that's being provided, in order to take some notes down. So you need to have that open in front of you. Let's make a start. So you'll notice I have a picture of a house here, and I want you to think about structure a little bit like building a house. There's different parts to the house, but without all of these parts, the house isn't structurally sound and it will fall down. We have the foundations here at the bottom and then the supporting beams here, but even the roof at the top. These are all integral to the success of a house standing up. And I want you to think about structure as a little bit like the individual parts of a house. You can have the individual parts, but they need to be pulled together in order for the house and, in fact, the play to be successful. We go into detail about structure. I just wanted to give you a couple of bits of terminology which are going to prove rather useful for you, not only in this lesson but going forward. The first one is Hammarsure, and as it says there, the character flaw or error of a tragic hero that leads to his or her downfall. Please find the bit on your document that looks like this, what is Hammarsure, and please pause the video now and put this definition into that section of your document. Pause it now. What Hammarsure is, what do you think is Macbeth's Hammarsure? What is his fatal flaw? Now, I'm sure you have been taught this in your English lessons anyway, so pause the video now, and again, on your document, what is Macbeth's Hammarsure? So in this part here, please, could you write what you think his Hammarsure is? Can you do that now? Pause the video. Okay, so hopefully you said that Macbeth's Hammarsure is his ambition, and Shakespeare presents ambition in Macbeth as something that is actually quite catastrophic. We often think of ambition as something that's positive, and we all have ambitions with our lives, but Shakespeare presents it as something, when it goes unchecked, can lead to tragedy and downfall. This particular quote, I think, sums up the problem with Macbeth's own Hammarsure and his own ambition. So, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition, which overleaps itself. Let's have a quick look at this in a little bit more detail. So, I have no spur. For those that don't know, spurs, if you imagine somebody on a horse, the back of the boot has a little metal thing that was used to stick into the sides of horses. I know it's quite horrible to think about, to make them go faster, so they kick the sides of the horse and the horse would go faster. So I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent. Macbeth is using a metaphor here, a piece of animal imagery, which Mr. Bell was talking about a few videos ago, to suggest that he himself is a horse, and the only thing that's going to make him go faster is this spur, and the spur that he's talking about is vaulting ambition. That's the thing that's going to get him to do all these terrible deeds. It's his own vaulting ambition, and he talks about his ambition as being vaulting, because vaulting means jumping, it jumps, but not only does it jumps over itself. So he's trying to suggest that his ambition is a bit of a vicious cycle. Every time he jumps over something, he wants more. He's never satisfied, and certainly we see that within Macbeth. I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but only vaulting ambition. He's saying he's almost like a horse. He's uncharacteristically out of control when he's faced with ambition. So, if you could now locate the document in this part here, can you think of a quote to summarize his Hammarsure? You don't need to use the quote that we've just discussed there, but if you want to, could you please write that down in this section, and could you just make a couple of notes why that's a particularly useful quote to talk about when thinking about Macbeth's Hammarsure. There you go, you've got a picture of a boot with a spur on there. So if you can imagine the metaphor that Shakespeare is using, that this spur here is Macbeth's ambition. And it will make him do anything if it's stuck into his side. Okay, so the next bit of terminology is hubris. Go ahead, find the bit in your document that you need. What is hubris? And you can pop this definition down. It's excessive pride or self-confidence. pause the video now and put that definition into the appropriate box. So if hubris is excessive pride or self-confidence, what is Macbeth's hubris? Go ahead and make your own guess now. Pause the video. Now there's not one answer. So Macbeth's hubris is most likely to be the fact that he believes that he is the rightful king. And that can be quite dangerous. He believes that he's the rightful king, so much so that he's willing to upset the great chain of being. Now remember, the great chain of being was the order that was set down, apparently by God, where God's at the top, then there's kings, and then there's the dukes and the earls, all the way down through the knights, through the men, the women, the stones, the plants. And there was a natural order of things, and Macbeth believes that it is his right to be the king, so much so that he's going to make sure it happens by not only listening to the witches who foretell that he is going to be the king, but he's going to take fate into his own hands by killing Duncan, having his best friend Banquo killed, trying to kill Fleance, who obviously was prophesied that he would be king as well, and killing Macduff's entire family and his servants in his castle, completely ignoring his own wife, and that ultimately leads to her death. So what's Macbeth's hubris? Well, it's the belief that he has that he's the rightful king. But as a result of that, all of these things happen. Go ahead, find the bit in your document, what is Macbeth's hubris, and fill in the gap there. So, what is structure? Teachers have a tendency to bang on about structure and assume that students know what it means. And frankly, when I was a student back in 1066, I had no idea what structure was and why it was so important. So hopefully I'll be able to just explain why it's important and why you need to know about it. Structure is simply what happens where and why is it important. And this is the same, by the way, for poetry. It's the same for Jekyll and Hyde. It's the same for an inspector calls. What happens where and why is it important? So in the case of Macbeth, what happens in each act, why is it there, and why is it important? It is as simple as that. So structure comes into this part of the mark scheme, AO2, language, form and structure. And it's specifically what the writer does to create particular meanings. Now it's easy to do that with language. Why does Shakespeare choose particular bits of language when he could have just used any other sort of language? With structure it's slightly different. But what you need to know is that structure can raise your progress by a grade or more. Talking about structure can be so important that it can elevate your grades by 1 or more. So, and what I mean by this is that it counts for 12 of your possible 30 marks. You've got to explain what the effects of the structure is, of course. You can't just say what the structure is. You have to talk about what the effect is. And one of the ways you can do that is by using this particular structural terminology, which I'm going to go through now. You're going to have this part of your document out in front of you, which is Freytags Pyramid. Freytag was a German philosopher who said that essentially with all stories and all plays and now all films, there is this structure that you can apply to it. Exposition, the inciting incident, the rising action, the complication, climax, reversal, falling action, resolution, and the denouement. So I'm going to go through how this fits in with Macbeth, and keep on pausing the video and ensuring that you're making your own notes on this. So the exposition is when we are exposed initially to the characters and the setting. So we meet the witches initially, and they plan to meet Macbeth. A sergeant and Duncan tells of how great a warrior Macbeth is, and therefore we are exposed to the scenario. We don't actually see Macbeth, but the exposition is when we meet the witches, and they and the other characters tell us, the audience, about how great a warrior Macbeth is. So the next part is the inciting incident, and in my opinion the inciting incident is the first prophecy coming true. The witches say that you're going to become Thane of Cawdor, and as soon as that happens, the messenger comes and says Macbeth, you are going to become Thane of Cawdor. And that leads the way to Macbeth believing that he could become king. So the incident is inciting, or the inciting incident is this first prophecy coming true, and Macbeth believing that he could eventually become king. Next, we have the rising action. So, Lady Macbeth and Macbeth commit to kill King Duncan at the end of Act 1. At the start of Act 2, King Duncan is murdered, and Macbeth then becomes the King of Scotland. So all of this is rising action. It's looking really good for Macbeth. His plan seems to be flawless. He's killed the king. He's now the King of Scotland. No problem. Apart from there is this complication. The complication is Banquo, not just Banquo, but Banquo's son, Fleance. In order to get rid of the complication, Macbeth murders Banquo, or gets some murderers to murder Banquo. And that's really the climax, because there is no way that Macbeth can come back after this stage. He's committed a heinous crime that can't really be reversed. Talking about reverse, we have now a reversal, and it's a reversal in fortune for Macbeth. Macbeth becomes this tyrant. He becomes paranoid. We don't see Lady Macbeth all the way through the second half of the play, all the way through Act 4, and it's only in Act 5 when she is sleepwalking and acting in a really strange way that we see her. So we have a reversal in fortune for Macbeth when he becomes paranoid, and that is compounded from when he learns that the Thanes are abandoning him and the English army is approaching en masse to Dunsinane. And this is obviously fulfilling the prophecy that the witches said, because they're all carrying those branches from Burnham Wood advancing on Dunsinane Hill. This is all within the falling action. The resolution is that Malcolm is crowned the rightful king, and it's a resolution because we no longer have a tyrant on the throne. And the denouement, the end of it, is a French word for the unraveling, is that Macduff kills Macbeth. And the moment that Macbeth realizes that Macduff was not from his mother's womb entirely ripped, that then heralds the end of the play. Makes sense, please pause the video and make sure that all of those notes are in this part of your document. Well, that's all good and well, but how can you write about structure in an exam question? Well, let's just remind ourselves of what a question might look like. It will say something like this: read the following extract from Act 1, Scene 7 and answer the question that follows. At this point in the play, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are considering whether to kill Duncan. So there's your first clue. The fact that the exam board are giving you where this event happens suggests that you've got to talk about the significance of why it happens there, and why structurally it's important to the house that is the play. So here we have Lady Macbeth trying to persuade Macbeth that he's not a man, be so much more than man. We've gone through this in class. Then you were a man, but you're not a man. Essentially, you're a coward for saying that you're going to do these things, but you're not going to do them now. And then she says this horrendous thing: "I've given suck and know how tender it is to love the babe that milks me. I would, while it was still smiling in my face, have plucked my nipple from its boneless gums and dashed the brains out. I sworn, as you have done, to this," saying that she would even kill her own child had she promised, like Macbeth had done. Macbeth says, if we should fail, Lady Macbeth says, we fail. So why is this important structurally? Well, Shakespeare includes this scene, you can write, in the rising action to show how far Macbeth has come, from the valiant warrior at the start of the act to one who is about to commit regicide at the end of it. Remember, worthy gentleman, worthy cousin, valiant gentleman, says Duncan at the start of this act. The very same act that they then decide to kill the king, the very person who says that he's so worthy and valiant at the start of it. So Shakespeare is using this to suggest that it's incredible how much Macbeth has changed in a small amount of time, all due to his hubris, all due to his vaulting ambition. So your task is this: complete this point by including the following words that you have learned today: hubris, Hammarsure, and then one other word from Freytags Pyramid. It's in your document. It's all here. Please go ahead, fill that in, email it to your teacher. Email them if you have any problems. Good luck.